All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It's Free for All Friday and hope to hear from you. 240-242-5646. And I hope you'll also, if you haven't yet done so, subscribe. There you go. Just click the bottom where I always say this, but I always thought it was obvious, but maybe it really isn't. The easiest way to do it if you're watching this video on YouTube is to click the blue and white square. The square itself is blue background with a white lettering, or maybe it's the other way. No, that is correct. Just like my oval is blue field, white font. Same thing on the YouTube stream to subscribe. There's lots of other ways to do it. It's not hard. Just hope you'll do that. Also, no charge whatsoever, obviously, for that. If you haven't yet become part of Halitics on Facebook, would love to see you there as well. It's kind of frustrating for me a little bit because there definitely are pile-ons and people who take issue with a meme seem to be far more inclined to comment than those who either have a different opinion but don't totally disagree with it or agree with it. And it's a little more contentious and cantankerous at Halitics than I would prefer. The goal here has been forever. I mean, before there was a Halitics podcast, when there was a Hal Ginsberg show, when there was a morning show, whatever you wanted to call it, whatever I've been posting, his goal is to find solutions to problems. Now, I like to think I'm kind of arrogant, I guess, pompous, whatever word you want to use. Lots of negative words spring to mind for, I'm sure, people. I believe I have answers. I think they're good ones. I think they would make life better for more people than other solutions that have been proposed. I think the reason they have not gotten the kind of traction they deserve in upper circles and higher circles because basically everything I propose would take wealth, power, influence from the rich, the powerful, and the influential. And they don't like it. And they control media. But there still seems to be a real reluctance. Now, I'm not speaking out in a vacuum. I'm not the only one who presents the solutions that I do, but one of the few. That's why we do Halitics. And unfortunately, again, I think people are really just, I think many are just overwhelmed by the challenges. You know, if the billionaires don't want something, they don't get it. If they do want something, they do. And what Halitics is about is defanging them, declawing them, and ultimately taking away their wealth. And that seems, I think, for so many, even those of us, 60%, 70%, 80%, some enormous number of Americans believe that the richest among us have far too much. And yet we keep voting for candidates who aren't prepared to take their wealth and power away, who aren't prepared to confront those billionaires. And we need to do something different, I think, clearly. All right, so in Minneapolis, we actually had kind of a brave protest. I want to just quick shout out to Hody down in the Florida Panhandle, Redneck Riviera down there, who brought this story to my attention. Hody's been a long-time supporter. I always appreciate hearing from him. We have different political views, but I greatly appreciate his the kind and supportive way he presents his disagreements. I think I get the sense from, he didn't quite come out and say this, so I don't want to assume anything, but my sense is he had, as so many do, a problem with the protesters at the St. Paul, Minnesota church who confronted a pastor who was apparently in the pews during a Sunday service, that pastor being an ICE coordinator agent, somebody who worked for ICE. And of course, that city is being roiled by the goons there, the government goons coming in and just stopping people willy-nilly. And we know, of course, killing somebody. We had retired U.S. Attorney Steve Snyder break it down, and it just seems clear to us that, and to most, I think, that this was just wrong. That guy just shot and killed a U.S. citizen who simply did not pose a danger to him. And the government, the federal government, the executive branch, specifically Trump, Bondi, are rather than, acknowledge, hey, this is not what we want to see in our law enforcement, they're tripling down attacking the victim. and investigating her rather than the perp, the killer. We see folks in Minneapolis taking on ICE at this St. Paul, Minnesota church. St. Paul, of course, right across the Mississippi River from Minneapolis. And I don't know that I've ever spent any real time in St. Paul, just drove right through it. Minneapolis is a nice interest. Minnesota, nice. There's the protester, Nalika Levy, and that's not her last name. They'll tell us. I don't have the exact name that right in front of me, but we'll play the video and we'll go from there. I think it's Armstrong. Is it Nalika Levy Armstrong? I think that's right. Let's play the video.
This is what community looks like. An activist who led an anti-immigration enforcement protest that disrupted a Minnesota church service has been arrested. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the arrest of Nekima Levy Armstrong in a post on X on Thursday.
Let me just stop it there. Nekima. I said Nalima. Nekima Levy Armstrong. I do apologize for getting that name wrong. And she has been in the past a Black Lives Matter activist. Worked as the chair CEO of a nonprofit, and I think now is doing trial work. So here, Nekima Levy Armstrong leading this protest. Don Lemon was apparently there as well. She was arrested. I don't know what the charge could possibly be. I don't know. Is there some law against disrupting a church service? Seems clearly to me this should be protected speech.
Protesters entered the city's church in St. Paul on Sunday.
You are a fake pastor.
A local official with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement serves as a pastor there, and Nekima Levy Armstrong has called for him to resign.
How can you be a pastor of a church, but overseeing ICE agents in the field?
There have been almost nonstop demonstrations in response to the January 7th death of 37-year-old Renee Good by an ICE officer in Minneapolis, along with the Trump administration's immigration crackdown nationwide.
I am here to stand in solidarity with the people.
Nekima Levy Armstrong is no stranger to activism in the Twin Cities area. She's a civil rights attorney who's helped lead local protests after high-profile police-involved killings of Black Americans, including George Floyd. He died in 2020 after being pinned to the ground by Minneapolis police officers, which sparked massive protests. She's also the former president of the NAACP's Minneapolis branch. Vice President J.D. Vance addressed the arrest at an event in Ohio.
They're scaring little kids who are there to worship God on a Sunday morning. Those people are going to be sent to prison.
So he's concerned about the kids. It's, I love that this is Vance. Oh, the poor children. What about the children of immigrants? What about immigrant children? What about the children whose health care you're denying now, whose Medicaid you're cutting off? The hypocrisy, the phoniness, the dishonesty of this administration is just mind-boggling. And that is not, and by the way, I know when I say that, righty gets really pissed off, right? He's like, oh, but what about lefty? What about lefty? What about Biden? Well, first of all, Biden wasn't lefty. Obama wasn't lefty. But yeah, they do really bad things too. Both sides, who are really the same side, can suck. If you have a defense for what this guy Vance is saying, then provide it, present it. Say, well, it's okay. Those children really were just totally, scared by people saying this is what because what were they chanting? This is what democracy looks like. That was so terrifying for kids. That was more terrifying than seeing an ICE agent stand in front of a vehicle, then get out of the way, pull out his revolver as he was getting out, pull out his revolver and put bullets in the head of a mom. You're saying it's more scary to hear people protest at a church for children than to see someone get gunned down in the streets of Minneapolis. Wow. That's quite an interesting take, Vice President Vance.
Have the power to do so.
It's not immediately clear what charges Levy Armstrong faces.
So how dare...
So that's what I said, right? I mean, what could you charge her with? You have a right. It's a public space. She has a right to go in and speak her truth. I mean, if they ask her to leave at some point, you could say trespass, I suppose. but the church is open to the public. But of course, the Trump administration is going to come up with some reason to say you can't go into a church and speak your truth.
While overseeing evil.
Now, it's really the irony there, and she absolutely, you cannot be. And the hypocrisy of a ICE agent, of somebody who's helping round people up, send them to gulags, beat them, take them away from their loved ones, take their children away from them, deny them access to attorneys. That is somehow considered sacred. You can't go into the church and confront those people. Amazing. It's, I mean, that it's the irony, though, and I will use whatever word you want. I don't care. That this administration, that by the way, has green lighted raids at churches, and yet is all up in arms. How terrible! How dare protesters violate the sanctity of a house of God? I hear that argument. Yes, you shouldn't violate the sanctity of a house of God. That's why the ICE guy shouldn't be a pastor there. That's why the church shouldn't allow him to be a pastor. Himmler went to Catholic church every Sunday, as I understand it. The blood of millions of Jews and others, not just Jewish people, millions and millions of Germans and Eastern Europeans and French and everyone was on the hands of this guy. He went to church every Sunday, but God forbid we should confront Heinrich Himmler in church, right? That's the argument. Meanwhile, ICE, Border Patrol, police, call them what you will, they're violating the sanctity of churches around the country.
A recent immigration enforcement sweep in Charlotte, North Carolina, met with organized resistance. Authorities targeted places of faith, and the immigrant church community is still feeling the aftershocks. Brody Carter brings us that story.
Traditionally, churches have been considered places of refuge, sanctuaries for all who seek it. But that changed in January. And during a recent community event here at Casa de Dios, a community member, a church member, was detained, leaving many feeling as if they have no place to turn.
We heard the news.
So I think that's a really important statement by the reporter, that the folks there feel they have no place to turn, right? So this is a community that's beset, that's under siege, that every time they step out of their house or even step inside their house, they could get attacked. They could have battering rams smashing down their door. They could have a knee at the back of their neck. And it doesn't even matter if they're in this country legally, that still happens. So churches have been considered, this is historical fact, sanctuaries. Now, I get under law, they're not. And if John Dillinger, I think he was arrested outside a movie theater, but he's in a church, you can arrest him. I get it. But the type of sanctuary that these churches are affording immigrants is precisely the kind of sanctuary that churches are supposed to afford people, the downtrodden, those who have nowhere else to go. That is precisely what Jesus stood for. Those are the teachings of this religion. And that was what is what Pastor Victor Ramirez is providing. And that was the sanctity that was violated by the government. And it's really important for those of you who want to claim, it's okay for ICE to go into a church and arrest people, to tread on church grounds and arrest people. But God forbid protesters confront a government goon in church. Let's think about this. Who's more godlike? The pastor who's ministering to those least among us, or the pastor himself who's involved in those cruel and inhumane practices that we've all seen on TV, if not in person?
eyes, but we say this is a safety place, and we're not doing nothing. We are not criminals.
Charlotte is home to a vibrant immigrant community, and in November, federal agents launched Operation Charlotte's Web to target possible criminals.
Aren't they so clever? Oh, Charlotte's Web. I mean, what is with these people? They just play with lives blithely, no concern, no sense of the humanity of others, none. That's what our country has become. That's who's in charge. And again, I'll say it over. I get those of you who voted for Trump because Harris was awful. I get that. I'm not going to shame you for that decision. There were certain positions that Trump took that I think were better than Harris's, at least in his campaign. And there were many positions that they took that were very similar. Now, of course, you could have, should have voted for Jill Stein, but okay, I'm not going to shame you for not voting for a candidate that was widely viewed, and I think accurately so, is not going to win. But just because you vote for somebody, and I've heard this from so many people, oh, if you vote for them, you can't criticize them, or you can only criticize them if you vote for them. No, they're the president. You can criticize them. This is horrific stuff. And I do not, for the life of me, this is something I cannot understand. People who I think are decent, who care, who are okay with this kind of abusive treatment of their fellow human beings, many of whom did not commit crimes. I know Trump's always, oh, these are rapists and murderers. Don't forget Lincoln Riley. Don't forget Lincoln Riley. So many are not. So many are innocent people caught up in a sweep. So many are Renee Goods, who in her case was actually murdered. All right, more.
If we have known murderers and known drug dealers and some very bad people, we want to get them out.
The result, according to pastors and attorneys, became a shock.
By the way, we want to get them out, right? The bad people. This is the guy who's trying to rewrite the Constitution with his minions on the Supreme Court to remove the birthright citizenship. So a child just born, what? They're murderers, Trump? That's why they don't get to be citizens here? I mean, it's just so transparently nonsensical what he's saying. And one more point. I get those who say, look, they're human beings. I get it. But, I'm a house painter. And I can't make a living as a house painter now because there are too many people who are in this country. I don't know if they have documentation. I don't know what their deal is. They weren't born here. If that I know, they don't speak English. And I can't get a job painting a house anymore for even minimum wage. I understand that. I do. I feel your pain. I truly do. And I don't say that like Bill Clinton, ironically or hypocrite. No, I get that. We do have to do things very, very differently in this country. But the problem isn't in the end people who are even worse off than you, who have even less than you. The problem is an incredibly unequal, unfair distribution of wealth in this country. It's government policies that make life intolerable in much of the world. So the folks living in the global south have no choice but starve there, get killed there, watch their daughter get raped by narco-terrorists there, or brave incredible challenges and dangers to come to a land where they're not welcome. That's what the U.S. has done. That's what we've created. We've got to go in a different direction. All right. The White House sparing no expense trying to demonize, I hope I get the name right, Nakima Levy Armstrong, who led that activity. And I give her so much credit for that. I think that's a great, I talked yesterday about, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday, about whether street protests where folks are standing there holding signs about Israel's genocide, is that effective? It's heroic, yes. Is it effective? And I would say this is heroic. I think it's effective. You hope it is. You hope it makes a difference. So here, the White House sparing no expense in trying to demonize those with the guts to challenge it. Digitally alters this picture of Ms. Levy Armstrong there. So she's the real picture, the picture when she was arrested, I guess, by DHS. She's defiant. She's standing strong. She's mad. Who can blame her? But, oh, we're going to make you cry. Oh, look. And since we couldn't actually make you cry, the schoolyard bully couldn't quite get her to cry, we're going to digitally alter her face so it looks like she's crying. That's the mentality of this White House. That's the 7th grade bully mentality of Pam Bondi and Donald J. Trump. You could vote for them. I'm not going to attack you or criticize you for that. What I'm going to say is, how can you support this? How can you look at this and not be disgusted, sickened, that sick at heart, at soul, at what this government is doing? It's despicable. It's truly despicable. That's who these people are in charge. One more point about Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi was not Trump's first choice to be Attorney General. If you watch Halitics, if you're familiar with my program, with my views, I said, as soon as Matt Gaetz was nominated for that position, Democrats should support him. They should say, okay, we got issues with Gaetz, and yeah, there's questions about, he was with apparently an underage prostitute. That's an allegation, and apparently it's legit. Guy clearly has questionable morality. He would have been so much less awful as Attorney General than Pam Bondi. He was just a complete puppet of this administration. I mean, Gaetz has been very willing to criticize Israel. Gaetz acknowledged the reality of the climate holocaust. He said, oh, no, yeah, we're doing it. Fossil fuels. Gaetz has shown in the past a welcome willingness to break with the Republican Party, and they were uncomfortable with him as a choice. Democrats led the charge against him. I don't think we would be seeing this kind of crap. Maybe we would. I don't think we'd be seeing this from a Gaetz Justice Department. I think Gaetz had a populist streak in him. He had real problems with big tech. He would have been taking on big tech, not giving it everything it wants. Democrats said, nope, we can't have that. Incredibly poor strategy. Was that you got some win? You own Trump? Was that what that was about? And just one other personal matter about that. Person used to have as a guest on this program. I heard that person saying, we've got to stop every single Trump nominee. They're all terrible. Okay, if you could stop the Trump nominees and then get your own choice in, you could torpedo Matt Gaetz as Attorney General and then maybe get Letitia James as Attorney General instead. Okay, I'd say that seems like a good idea. But you don't get to do that. You get one nominee defeated, then the president gets to choose somebody else. Couldn't have been clearer that Matt Gaetz was the least bad you could get out of Trump. And at the same time, it couldn't have been clearer that Marco Rubio was totally awful as Secretary of State. And every Democrat voted for him, including Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Hartman. Why was I thinking about Elizabeth Hartman? Was an actress who was popular in the 60s and 70s. How did I possibly confuse her with Warren? I don't know. 240-242-5646. When confronted, let me just get back to that page for a sec. So, yeah, this is who these people are, right? They got to, we made her cry. Aren't we the big shots? Aren't we special? When, asked about that, well, wait, she wasn't, that didn't happen. This is what the the White House had to say. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. These people are that awful. By the way, again, 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. Love to hear what you have to say about all of this and more, and what we should be doing about it. Here's what Kaylin Dorr, Deputy Communications Director at the White House, had to say. Oh, look, we say to those who feel the need to reflexively defend perpetrators of heinous crimes in our country, I share with you this message. Enforcement of the law will continue. The memes will continue. Thank you for your attention to this matter, he said. That's interesting. I thought Kaylin would have been a woman, but I guess it could be either. So the heinous crime that Nikema Levy Armstrong committed was freedom of speech in a church? Is that what they're saying? Not killing anyone, not beating anyone, not maiming anyone, not stealing from anybody. Calling out an ICE agent who has no business as a pastor in a church is a heinous crime. It's also interesting because, as I said, I don't know what she did that was illegal. And you heard in that report, it's unclear. They don't have anything. Just like they have nothing against Tim Walz, they have nothing against Ilhan Omar for the daycare, childcare scandal there. They'll come up with something. And some people will actually believe it. Pastors, Christian leaders are demanding justice against these heinous criminals. Unspeakable evil to go into a church and say, we're calling you out. You're complicit, and you're actually not complicit. You're guilty of rounding people up, deporting them without hearing, without due process, separating families. That's what you're guilty of. That's not Christian. According to these leaders, that's unspeakable evil. All of this is just, it's complete newspeak. It's got nothing to do with where we are with reality. It is absolutely 1984. And if you want to know what Christianity looks like, if you want to know what kindness looks like, if you know what the teachings of Jesus are, this is what they are. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. That's what our country should be. That's what we should aspire to. Is it possible to go even further away from this ideal? It's really hard. Look, I get it. It's really tough to welcome strangers. They could be bad people. They could be doing bad things. They could be after your money. I get it. It's all of that is difficult. But there are ways to welcome strangers without putting yourself at risk. That's why we have a government. There was a guy in New York City who used to open up his apartment to homeless people. He was, I think, pretty wealthy. Upper East Side, probably had a few $1,000,000, I'm guessing, where he lived. I don't know. And he was an older guy, kind of lonely, felt bad for people. He used to say, hey, yeah, you guys want to come upstairs? You can come sleep in, my couch, my guest room. And one day he was killed. One of the homeless people, mentally ill, killed him. It's a true story, I believe. You can look it up. I'm pretty certain. I always get nervous when I tell stories off the cuff, but I'm almost certain this happened exactly as I describe it. You take a risk when you welcome strangers into your own home. That's why you have government agencies that are designed to protect the stranger, to take care, make sure they have a home, make sure they have a place to go, their children are fed, they have a warm meal. That's why we have government. Because you cannot expect, and it would not be fair to expect individuals to put themselves out. And then there's a free rider problem. If I welcome homeless people into my house, everyone benefits from that, not just the homeless person. There's not people on the street, fewer people on the street. Less likely to be crime, less likely to be theft. If I feed people, they don't need to steal to get food. So everyone benefits from my personal individual largesse. That's the free rider problem. Other people are riding for free on my generosity. That's why we have government. And what has our government done to strangers? We're pulling the welcome mat out from under them. We're pushing them out the door. We are separating them from their families. I really, look, remember what we talked about this, Silver. Nate Silver said the worst thing Trump did was January 6th. And I think that was bad. You know, he did foment an insurrection, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to, it's close, but it was bad. It was really bad. And what was even worse than that was his machinations to try to remain in power after he'd clearly lost the election. Awful. That may be the worst thing he did. Not the January 6th, but the conspiracy to steal an election, to subvert democracy. But I'll tell you really close is this incredibly inhumane treatment towards immigrants. It's really awful. And yeah, and helping Bibi with the murders, Palestinians, the genocide. I mean, there's so much, but man, I mean, I can't. It just seems like such a betrayal of what our country's values should be. And it breaks my heart. Honestly, this is so not what I want. All right, 240-242-5646. Let me know if you do want it, if you think this is good. This is a good solution to the underemployment problem, to low wages. Yeah, we get rid of these laborers. We reduce the supply of labor. We're going to increase the price. It's true. There is something to that. It's not complete nonsense. All right, 240-242-5646. We're going to get, by the way, folks who dislike the Democrats, I'll get to you. We'll get to a story on them. This was something I saw on Facebook that really upset me, this video. I'm sure it's correct. These are folks, Park Service people in Philadelphia, who are removing slavery exhibits from Philadelphia's Independence National Historical Park. Now, I was there, by the way. Why is my countdown to get rid of that? I was at that exhibit. And, you know, it was really powerful. There's a lot there because the Washingtons, George and Martha, lived there in that right there. They had a home and they had slaves they brought from Virginia when Philadelphia served as the capital of the country. And the exhibits talk about that. And it's a really important aspect of our history that we should not neglect, that we should not ignore. We have to understand that. I'm not one of those who says because there was this country when it was founded, I don't say it was founded on slavery. And some people say that, and they'll talk about the 1619 Project. I think they go too far. But that doesn't mean slavery didn't exist. It doesn't mean that it wasn't a significant part of our nation, of our founding, and on and on and on. It has incredible importance historically. We should absolutely remember the founders, the good and the bad, which often outweighed the good. Apparently, George Washington did want to free his slaves on his death when it wasn't going to cost him anything. And he did, I think. His wife, as I remember these exhibits, and you learn a lot, she was cruel. They had little torture things that they used to, like, screw the fingers of recalcitrant slaves. Maybe a household servant wasn't quick enough, or the food wasn't cooked the right way. Martha would apparently have them tortured. So that's what I remember. It's really important stuff. We should not pretend it didn't happen. And it was a problem because by this time, I think the 1780s, 1790s, even if slavery wasn't outright banned in Pennsylvania, there was a very significant abolitionist movement there, and slaves ran away. And that was a reason, as I recall, one, that the capital was moved back to D.C. Now, I think they had always planned to, but the fact that this was a free state, or was well on the way to being a free state, where enslavers were not looked favorably upon by a large percentage of the population was a reason to move back to D.C. It's really horrific. That's our history. And Trump's denying it completely, just crushing it under a bulldozer, basically. And it's heartbreaking to me, and I'm sure to many others. How can we make amends for the awful things that we have done, and so many other countries have done, if we pretend they didn't happen? And that's what this administration wants to do, is doing.
In Philadelphia or everywhere?
Yeah, so really, really bad stuff. Really, really bad stuff. We do want to see these people defeated. We do want to take power from them. They're not good people. The problem is the loyal opposition isn't much at best. I'm revisiting a story that I talked about earlier this week. This is the billionaire tax, surtax, that there's a ballot initiative that has made the ballot, and I'm sure will be voted on by the people of California. And that would put a 5% surtax on much, not all, of billionaires' wealth. You have over $1 billion, whatever you have over that $1 billion would be subject to it, with certain exceptions, including property, because property is subject to property tax and some other assets. This is promoted by the SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West, and it is designed to save California's healthcare system from collapse, which, make no mistake, it's close to that. Massive cuts to federal healthcare funding are driving California towards a collapse. $100 billion will be stripped from California healthcare over the next 5 years, and when they say leading to fewer emergency workers, less money to pay for Medicaid, fewer suppliers of health care will be able to continue to operate. People and also the income levels where you can get Medi-Cal will be raised. So it's awful. It's really, really awful what the federal government is doing. And there have been studies that will show that the specific harm that this is going to cause is very, very significant. People will die. Working families will go bankrupt. Almost certainly there will be an increase in homelessness because people will do everything possible, including spend the rent money so that their loved one or they themselves can get life-saving treatment, which previously might have been covered and now will, in many cases, not be. Keck School of Medicine there at University of Southern California. New research analysis predicts that reductions in Medicaid access could result in poor health outcomes, including increased deaths. What a surprise that is. Eliminating the provision in the Affordable Care Act that expanded Medicaid access could also drive millions to delay needed care, according to a new research letter in the Lancet. So obviously, it's really, really bad. And there's more. I mean, they're very specific. This study was well researched, well funded by top, big names, right? Big shots. School of Medicine at USC, I'm sure that must be a top 5, 10, 20 medical school. I can't believe there are many better. I know UCLA, if you're from LA, UCLA is probably better. What is that, the David Geffen? Is it the David Geffen School of Medicine now? Investigators at the Keck School of Medicine at University of Southern California, Boston University, and the University of Amsterdam built on existing research to predict the impacts of reductions in the scope of coverage. Thousands of additional deaths among working-age Americans, disastrous financial burden for hundreds of thousands, and delays in care for millions. And they explain exactly what it is. Joint federal and state program providing health insurance to qualifying individuals. Most of the people who get Medicaid have jobs. Many of the others are children. So I know one of the arguments that those who oppose these programs lodges, well, I work. That's how come I have health care. I have insurance through my job, my employer. These people just need to get better jobs, or they just need to get jobs because they're not working at all. They are working. They may be working 2 or 3 jobs. They may be working gig economy jobs. They may be working part-time jobs because there's fewer and fewer full-time jobs available because companies are deliberately reducing hours of employees so they don't have to provide them with health care. That's where we are as a country. They deserve health care every bit as much as you. Quite extraordinary. That's where the cuts are, right? People who have gig economy jobs, who work part-time, several part-time jobs perhaps, they're going to die. Some of them are going to die. Some of them are going to go bankrupt. They're going to see increased levels of stress, anxiety. Probably there'll be increases in crime as a result too. It's just really, really bad. And the way this study was done in part was by looking at what was the impact of the Affordable Care Act. Now, I have a major problem with the Affordable Care Act. I think the Affordable Care Act set all sorts of bad incentives, including what we just talked about, and incentivizing companies to reduce full-time positions and instead staff with lots of part-time workers that they didn't have to provide health care to. That was clearly a foreseeable negative implication from the ACA. I have big problems with it. One of the positive impacts, though, was when it was first implemented, it actually did result in more people getting coverage and more people getting care who needed it. And in many states, there was an increase in Medicaid funding and in those who were covered by Medicaid. Now, not all, because a number of states fought that tooth and nail, and the John Roberts Court said that, fine, you don't want to cover your neediest, then don't. Or you're all but the neediest, you don't have to. But the expansion that did occur reduced deaths. We saw people survive, live. There are people who are alive today because of the expansion in Medicaid that accompanied the Affordable Care Act. Their counterparts will now die. California, recognizing this terrible problem, decided, at least citizens, that what we should do, unions, what we should do is raise the tax on billionaires. They don't pay enough. We'll have a just one time, 5%. Why? Because reducing coverage, reducing payments to providers, reducing insurance coverage in and of itself will not only kill poor people, struggling people, it will also have a ripple effect that's very negative. As you can see there, reducing coverage could not also touch lives of people who aren't Medicaid enrolled. People who live in rural areas may see their hospital, the one place they can go if they're, suffer a serious injury. It may close because those hospitals depend to a significant degree often on Medicaid payments, but many rural areas very poor. The only way that the people who live in those communities can go to the hospital and get treated for, if it's life-threatening, then the hospital has to provide it. If they can't get paid for that, they're going to go out of business. It's just that simple. And even if you live in that community, let's say you're middle class, you're a lawyer, you're a professional, you're a teacher, you have health care. Doesn't matter. If the hospital shuts, what are you going to do? Drive 3 hours, 5 hours to Bakersfield, Los Angeles? You're out there in the Mojave or something? You're screwed. That's what the Trump cuts result is the result, has been the result. We've seen more and more rural centers closing, and more will continue to close because of those cuts. Californians are saying, no, 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 we don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen. Those tech bros, Silicon Valley, the heirs to the Getty billions, others, the Mars heir who lives in California, I think some of the Walton family, the billionaires, they can afford to pay more. And if we charge them I go back to the fact that there's no estate tax in California. That just is absurd. Regardless, this is a solution. It's not a perfect solution. It's not what I would choose if I wanted to raise more money on a consistent basis. Again, I think an estate tax makes all that much more sense. But look, it's better than nothing. The only people who are going to have to pay anything with this wealth tax are the billionaires who can easily afford it. And there will be ripple positive effects, of course, from taking something from them. These corruptors is what they are. They're corruptors. They corrupt government. They take everything for themselves. It's a no-brainer. It's not perfect. There are better answers, but this is an answer and one that should be embraced by the Democratic Party, even if it's not perfect. Governor's Field ain't buying it. We talked about this early in the week, but I really wanted to talk about that study that makes clear just how devastating those cuts will be to Californians. Governor's Field isn't buying wealth tax. So there you see Katie Porter, super lefty. I don't like it, she says. I'm not for it. I'm against it. I don't care if Ro Khanna liked it. I don't. So that's Katie. How about the rest of the field? Some of the names there you think are pretty liberal, pretty progressive, maybe even. Not Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, who, by the way, was never that progressive. Let's be honest. Let's be clear. He was not a real progressive at any point. He doesn't support it. He doesn't support the billionaire tax. Former Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra. I mean, you'd think if anyone got the importance of expanding or maintaining Medicaid funding in California, it would be a former Health and Human Services Secretary, Xavier Becerra. No, he doesn't like it. And former state legislator Ian Calderon, I think he's a Republican, all explicitly said they opposed it. No one else in the crop took a position. A sign of the fraught politics. Well, it's just fear of being targeted by the billionaires. That's what it is. And also, I think some of them, hey, these are my buddies, my drinking, I don't know about Katie Porter. I don't know, Villaraigosa. I probably hangs out with some Hollywood billionaires. I'm guessing the Spielbergs and the Geffens and the like. I don't know. They all oppose it, though. That we all know. We know that. It's so disheartening, so upsetting. One of the, and if you keep reading that article, and I didn't include a slide, they ask them, well, why not? And they all have different excuses and explanations. Well, this could drive billionaires out of the state, which ridiculous. It's inefficient. It's just a one-time shot. There are better ways to raise the money. I don't necessarily disagree with those arguments. I said that, look, even the argument it'll drive people out of the state kind of passes the giggle test because maybe someone will. Maybe there's some anti-taxer who's so upset about the fact that they might have to pay, out of their $20 billion hoard, they might be left with only $19 billion after that tax is collected. Maybe there's someone out there like that. I don't know. But did I do that math right? I think so. 5% of 20 billion would be, yeah. Now, of course, if they lived in New York City and their estate was a $20 billion estate, they would have to pay $3.2 billion in estate tax. Their estate would pay $3.2 billion. So a lot more in other states would be subject to being taxed at one point or another. But I get it. There might be some anti-tax who's like, I'm going to move to a state without a estate tax. I'm going to move to Florida. I'm going to move to Texas. I get that. Okay. Kind of passes the giggle test. Let them go. Goodbye. You leave the state, that 40-acre spread you have, south of San Francisco, well, we can cut it up, subdivide it, build condos in it on part of the land, set aside the rest of it for, national park or state park, and we'll have a lot of affordable housing. So, I mean, goodbye, billionaire. See ya. But yeah, there's some legit arguments. It isn't the most efficient way, and you got possible questions about constitutionality and the like. So you know what? If you don't like that wealth tax, you don't think it's the best way to do it, come up with another solution. But what you should say is, yeah, I support it because we need the money and because there's not going to be any harm to anyone who will feel it. And there will be a lot of benefits. But yeah, in the end, would I prefer an estate tax? Yes. In the end, would I think that a gas tax is another means for raising revenues? Yes. Do I think we should be having that wealth tax, every year, whatever? If you don't agree with this, you don't think this is the ideal solution, but you acknowledge that the state needs to raise more money, which they all said. Becerra said, yeah, they need to pay more. Katie Porter said, oh, nobody takes a backseat to me when it comes to taxing billionaires. I supported Biden's wealth tax or whatever. Okay, so support this with the caveat. Say, yeah, I support this, but once it's enacted, we should be doing this instead. Or I support this, even though I don't think it's ideal. So you know what? Let's enact an estate tax now, so we don't need the wealth tax, right? There's lots of ways to get that revenue, but one way you won't get it is by claiming you oppose this tax. It's incredibly disingenuous. It's BS. If they really believed in funding healthcare in California for poor, struggling, working people, middle-class people, if they really believed in that, they would support this tax with the caveat that, yeah, there are better ways to do it. We support it, but we would prefer to go in this direction instead. And they'd be much more likely to get that. They don't say it because they're corrupt, because they're afraid of the ire of the billionaire class. That's the only reason. Because it certainly can't be based on any kind of legitimate. Now, I think maybe Gavin, I don't know how much money he has. He's a very wealthy person. Maybe he thinks he'll become a billionaire. Sometimes people, they harbor these dreams. Oh, I could become a billionaire myself. Maybe that's what he's thinking. I don't know. I don't think the others. Katie Porter's worth $1 million or $2 million. She doesn't have much money. I don't think she, in that air, she doesn't. She's not, among the rich. So I'm not really clear. I don't know. But regardless, if you believe in funding healthcare in California, even if you don't think a wealth tax is the best way to do it, you still support the wealth tax, and then you promote alternatives that you think are better. Then you're more likely to get them. You got to vote for Butch Weirlook. It's so clear. Here's what Weir says. Bill Clinton 2.0 over here continues to fuel his presidential ambitions by burning California down on his way out. Dems cannot be redeemed. 100%. Newsom vows to stop proposed billionaire tax. So, obviously, this guy is bad. Newsom's bad. And every other Democrat who's expressed an opinion in California is taking an equally loathsome position. It's awful. There's really just no way to spin it, to look at it differently, to say there's any good aspect to that. I don't say you should never vote for a Democrat. I wouldn't even say you should never vote for a Republican. If I was in Kentucky, I probably would vote for Thomas Massie. If I lived in Georgia and MTG was running in my district, she's not. I don't live in Georgia, A, and B, she ain't running anyway. Maybe I would vote for her. I can't say I wouldn't. I don't know. I'd have to hear the positions of her opponent. But, she's against funding Israel. So, yeah, I would consider, I'm not saying you shouldn't vote for a Republocrat under any circumstances. What I'm saying is right now, the Republocrats have done a number on our country and our world, and we got to go in a different direction if we want to save it. It's that simple. There's a candidate, actually, before I have one more little story, two more little stories I want to talk about. And again, I do want to hear from you. It's a free-for-all. It's time for you to call me, 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. I know I don't have a huge number of viewers and listeners, but I know I have some based on the numbers that I get from Facebook and YouTube. So really, this is about a dialogue, a conversation, and I'd love to have that with you. 240-242-5646. All right. Don't forget, if you haven't yet done so, please subscribe now. I talked about this guy with Carlos. Hopefully we'll have Carlos Monday. Hopefully we'll do a show Monday. It depends on the weather, I think. It depends on my ability to get back from New York over the weekend. But Carlos and I talked about this guy, Boafo, Adrian Boafo, who is a Maryland state delegate who's running for Steny Hoyer's seat. Steny Hoyer, number 2, number 3 Democrat. I think he's not none of those now. Was he a majority leader he may have been the majority leader under Nancy Pelosi, I believe, at one point. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it was Hakeem Jeffries. I don't know. He could have been whip. Kathleen Clark is now the whip. Who, by the way, Kathleen Clark, known for saying, yes, it's a genocide. Oh, no, I didn't mean that. It's not a genocide. Carl's and I talked about Boafo. I knew nothing about him. But now I know that I wouldn't support him because Steny Hoyer endorsed him. That's enough for me. That's good enough for me. If this is Steny Hoyer's pick, I don't want him. I mean, it's just that simple. Just that simple. One more quick Dem story. So I actually volunteered to help, or I filled out, I wouldn't say I didn't quite volunteer. I filled out a form expressing interest in volunteering for a candidate who's running for Montgomery County Council. And I like some of their policies a lot. And I think they've shown more bravery, more guts than any other candidate I'm aware of running. Real, credible candidate running for this particular office. I don't believe there's anyone who's in their league. Maybe there's one or two. I'm not sure. I went to their website, and I was given a link to the volunteer form, and this question popped up, and I was like, "Why do you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you insist on alienating people with a question about pronouns? It's totally unnecessary. It's only going to irritate people who are like, what is this about? Why should I tell you my pronouns?" Now, the answer that would probably be given is, well, some people look like women, but they're men, and some people look like men and they're women, and we want to make sure we don't misgender them. So in those few circumstances where you're even going to use the pronoun for them, because you're not going to when you're talking to them, right? You never say to somebody, him, her. You say you, which is not gendered. But in those rare cases, then you can ask them. You can say, what do you prefer? Or you risk it. And then they say, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm not a Ms. I'm a Mr. Or I'm a mix. That's what you do. You don't need, nobody needs this. And you're definitely going to alienate people. Now, that said, I get it if you want to make it optional, right? Okay, we want to give people an opportunity. If they want to share their pronouns, they can, but they don't have to. So you could say pronouns optional. But you see the little star that I circled in blue? That means you have to answer the question, even if you don't want to. By the way, I understand that some trans people don't like that question. They're not all in there's not unanimity among the trans community that this is an appropriate question to ask. Some are like, you don't need to, that's not something you need to know about me. That it's intrusive. It's unnecessary. So there isn't unanimity. But if you made the question optional or you said pronouns optional, I would be far less annoyed by this. I still wouldn't think it was a smart, because you want to win an election, right? Isn't this alienating voters that you want? It sure feels like that to me. But what they could do and what I think they should have done, and we've seen this in a lot of different forms, then just put it like, sir, what is it? Title? I think it's title. So you could have Mr., Miss, Ms., Mix, Doctor. You could do that. You could have other, you could have optional. You could do that. I don't think that would be as controversial. I don't think that would cause the kind of resentment that some would feel that this somehow issue is being foisted on them. And so I say to Democrats, and I say to this candidate in particular, I'll still vote for you. I'm not sure if I can. I don't know if they're in my district. I'll still vote for you. This isn't going to stop me from voting for you. Because your policies, it's not a policy question. Your policies are better than the other candidates. But you're putting yourself in a position where you're making an issue out of something that I don't think you want to be an issue. So why? Why do that? All right, that's going to do it for today's Halitics. Hopefully I'll be back Monday. Please, again, do click subscribe. I'm going to try to do at least a couple more of those shorts that get real good audience views over the weekend. It may be tough because, again, I'm traveling and I won't have as much time, but I'm going to do my best. Thank you all for being part of Halitics. It is incredibly appreciated. Keep the comments coming. Questions, concerns, whatever you want to call them. Would love to see what you have to say. And I will return, yes, indeed, hopefully, the weather permitting, Monday with